This video is sponsored by Squarespace. I've personally been using Squarespace for my website for the last few years, and I recommend it to everybody. If you're a photographer, it's a really easy way to showcase your portfolio or have a place for clients to get in touch with you, or just have your own blog. There's all kinds of different options, and it's super easy to use. So if you need a website, check out Squarespace. What's up guys, Matt Day here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a camera that I've been shooting non-stop for the last 2 months, and that's the Rolleiflex 2.8F. Now if you guys are familiar with the channel, you've probably seen the video that I did a few months ago where I basically just gave my first impressions of the camera. At that point, whenever I made that video, I had only been shooting with the camera for a few days, so I didn't have a ton of experience with it, and I just wanted to basically share my excitement for it because I really loved the camera as soon as I started shooting it, but I could tell that it could use a good CLA. The shutter could probably be tuned up, it could be cleaned really well, and I wanted to get a brighter focusing screen installed, and I ended up sending this to Harry Fleener. Now, whenever I did the first impressions video, I talked about how Harry Fleener was who everybody recommended. Everyone said nothing but great things about his work when it comes to repairing rollies, but the fact that he had a 3-month turnaround time, it was something I didn't really want to wait for because I'm impatient when it comes to this kind of stuff, and I know that it would be well worth it in the the long run. I still just wasn't really looking forward to it, so I decided to reach out to him and ask him if he offered a rush service, which he said he did, and it was basically like a 3% fee, basically based on the total price of everything, that you would just add that on and he could turn it into a 3 to 4 week turnaround time. And that was money well spent in my opinion, because I knew that our son Elliot was going to be born pretty much any day at that point, and I wanted to get it as soon as possible. And while I didn't get the camera back until after a week or so after Elliot was born, I still got to shoot a lot of photos just from within his first month with this camera. And as far as Harry Fleener's work, it's absolutely outstanding. This camera feels like it's going to last another 30 years without ever needing any kind of service to it, providing I don't drop it on the pavement. But it's really smooth, super smooth, much smoother than I really thought would be possible, because whenever I got the camera, it felt pretty smooth. It felt like everything was in okay condition, but I figured it could probably be a little bit better, but I didn't realize it could be that much better, because whenever I first got this back, it just blew me away. So I know this isn't really a review of the camera, this is more just about his work, but I did want to take the time to vouch for his work and tell you guys that it is well worth it, in my opinion, if you want to get one of these things restored to its, basically straight out of the factory condition. He does absolutely incredible work. Now on top of that, he also did install the Maxwell screen. I went with the Maxwell High Lux screen, and this thing is crazy bright. Even indoors, no matter what kind of lighting condition I'm in, it just pops right into focus whenever you lock onto something, and it just makes focusing really quick for me. And that makes the world of difference, because if you're shooting a twin lens reflex like this, or anything with a waist level viewfinder, the quicker it is that you can focus with it, the more useful it is, because sometimes people do have a hard time adjusting from a regular, prism viewfinder to a waist level, and something that's, really this beneficial and really speeds things up, it's completely worth its weight in gold. Now, as for the shooting experience itself, I do really enjoy using this camera. In all honesty, this is probably one of the most enjoyable cameras I've ever got to shoot with. As far as shooting 6x6, a lot of people have asked how I like it compared to a Hasselblad camera, because the Hasselblad 500cm is one of my all-time favorite cameras. That was like my workhorse camera for about a year, several years back, and I just absolutely love that camera. And in all honesty, I think I prefer this camera over that, because whenever I shot with the Hasselblad, I pretty much always shot with an 80mm lens, and I pretty much always just had one film back. So I didn't really take advantage of the different things that you would with a Hasselblad, because with this camera, I don't have the option to change my lens, and I don't have the option to change my film mid-roll like you would with a Hasselblad, because it has a film back. So it's really no different in terms of like what you get over the other, and I'm just basing this purely on the shooting experience. I love the Hasselblad, I love the sound of their shutter and everything, but this thing is just an absolute dream to use. It's so much fun, and just the whole experience of it, with everything being super compact. I've had TLRs before, And, I've had everything from the Yashica mat to a Mamiya C330, which is a much bigger TLR, but the fact that you're getting what you're getting out of this camera, experience and, quality-wise, in such a small form factor, it's really, really, really nice. So if I could shoot one medium format camera only for the rest of my life, based on all the cameras I've just tried out and, owned over the years, I honestly think I would pick this camera just because it is that much fun to use, and it's just so nice. One thing I didn't think I was actually going to use on this camera is the meter. Harry was able to, kind of get the meter up and running again, and honestly, it's surprisingly reliable and accurate. I went around the house and I tested out different kinds of light and, different areas of light, and just kind of getting a reading with a handheld Sekonic meter versus the meter here, and honestly, it's pretty accurate. There would be a couple of times where, the meter would be tricked by, if I was shooting something that was backlit, or certain situations like that where if there was just one little small area of light where there was a lot more light and I wanted to expose for that, it might be reading everything else instead. But, if I have that in mind and I'm seeing what the meter is reading overall, I can kind of adjust things from there. Once you've shot enough, you start to kind of know your exposures, and just having that meter be accurate enough that I can basically get a good starting point for roughly where my exposure is, that just made the camera even more convenient because I didn't have to also carry around a handheld meter. I just trusted this and personal experience, and pretty much all the photos you're going to see today were shot that way. Now, like I mentioned, unlike the Hasselblad, you can't really change a whole lot on this camera, but you do have a lot of different accessories, and I'm going to get into all that here, but I have a pretty good substantial kit here. I have the prism viewfinder, I have some colored filters, some close-up filters, the lens hood, the strap. I actually also have a leather Ever-Ready case that came with the camera, but it's in really bad condition, and the previous owner put their number and their address and name and everything on the back of it, and then I think they used a highlighter over leather, so it looks really bad, and I don't even use it or anything. But you can get a lot of different stuff for this camera, so accessories are out there, and we'll talk about all those here in just a minute. Before we do anything else though, I do want to take a minute just to give you guys a close look at the camera, show you where everything is and how it all works, and then we're going to load some film and I'll show you guys some of my favorite photos. Alright, so we'll go ahead and take a closer look at the camera. First things first, the lens cap. It's a folding design, which is pretty interesting. I've never owned a camera before this one that does this, but basically you have this hinge right here in the middle. The bottom lens cap folds up, and then you just rotate it. It's in a bayonet mount, and that's how you take the lens hood off. The lens itself, it's an 80mm f2.8 Zeiss planar lens. Not much to say about it other than it's an amazing lens. If you've shot any kind of Zeiss lenses before, you know how great they are, and that's really all there is to say about it. Right here, these dials, these are the controls for your aperture on this dial and your shutter speed on this dial. So as you're looking down into the camera, you can probably see here there are two little windows that show you what your aperture setting is at and what your shutter speed setting is at. So as you change these dials here, it's going to adjust your settings, and it's a really comfortable kind of setup because your thumbs just naturally kind of rest right there, and it's super comfortable to shoot with. Your shutter speed dial, or not your shutter speed dial, your shutter release button right here on the front. It's nice to have your index finger right there. Super comfortable, and if your shutter is already cocked and ready to go, and say you're throwing this into your camera bag and you don't want to accidentally bump this and waste an exposure, you do have a lock right there. You just flip this up, you can't press it in, and then just fold it back down when you're ready to shoot. So I have found that is extremely useful. Any camera that has any kind of shutter release lock, I'm always using it. Over here on this side you have your focusing knob. So this is where you're actually going to be focusing, and you can see the lenses moving forward, and as I'm adjusting that's how you set your focus. And also on the focusing knob here on the side, this is where your meter is. So as you're changing these dials, there are two little needles in there that are going to be moving up and down, and that's how basically it changes, and that's how you use your meter. Now, if you notice, I had to kind of push in on this. It's a little bit snug, and sometimes that top needle will get caught. So if you're ever using this kind of camera and that happens, I just kind of push down on this a little bit, and that window kind of basically unlocks it. So I think it's just the nature of it being an old camera, and sometimes that happens. But that's how you unlock it if your camera ever does that. I didn't really worry about it too much once I realized it did that, because that's a pretty easy fix. So that's, how you focus the camera. That's where your meter is. Over here on the side, you have your ASA dial. So this is how you're going to adjust what film speed you have in there. So depending on what film you have in there and what your meter is set to, or what this dial is set to, that's going to affect your meter, obviously. So if you're using the meter, you want to make sure you do set that accordingly. Over here, you have where you would actually attach your strap. I'll kind of show you how that works. This is just I think it's made by Photodiox, maybe. It's that Amazon brand where they make all of the third-party accessories for like every camera out there. But it's just this, simple little Rolleiflex strap. It's just black, and it has this little red leather belt around this end of it. But it was like 20 or 30 bucks, something like that on Amazon. That's where I bought this. But the way you attach the Rolleiflex strap, it's this little design right here where you kind of pinch these down to release it. So whenever you push this down into this little slot, it just kind of locks into place, and now you're good to go. And if you want to remove the strap, you just pinch on the bottom here, and that releases it. So yeah, simple enough to use, but you have one on each side, obviously. That's how you attach the strap. But just so it stays out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and set this off to the side, because we don't really need that right now. Over here on this side, you have your frame counter window, and you also have your advance lever, or your advance crank, whatever you want to call it. Basically, this is what you're going to do to advance your film and also cock your shutter. So whenever you're loading the film, you'll load your film and wind it all the way up, and I'll show you how all that works in a minute. But whenever you're actually shooting with the camera, say I'll take a shot just like that, and then I'll lift this up and I'll rotate it back this way, and you'll hear it'll actually stop you in its place, and then you go back and then you fold it down so it's out of the way. Or, if you want, you could just set it and bring it back like that and leave it up as you're shooting. You don't have to set it back down, but sometimes it's just nice to get it out of the way. That way you don't have to worry about it. But that's how that works. And yeah, there's no film in here, obviously, but I'll load some film here in a minute. But while I'm doing this, I'll go ahead and let you guys hear a couple of different shutters at 50th of a second. It's super quiet. It's a leaf shutter. It's in the lens, so it's not going to be loud. You don't have any mirror bounce or anything like that. But I like that about it. I like discrete kind of cameras. I'll slow it down to, let's say, half a second, so you guys can hear that as well. Again, still quiet. You kind of hear the duration of the shutter, but I always like old mechanical cameras that sound like that. Yeah. So that's how that works. Really, really simple. On the back of the camera, you have your little exposure chart here that people obviously used a lot back then. I never use it because I just kind of go off of experience, but it's going to help you if you want to kind of go through things and see different exposure values and work with that kind of stuff. On the bottom here, you have your tripod mount and also how you open up the camera, and I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how that works. Also, real quick before I forget, up here, this is where the light meter will actually pick up the light. So if this is covered up, it's going to affect your light meter. As you're kind of covering this up, you can watch your meter and see how it's being affected. But basically, that's just where all the light comes in. That's all you need to know. So on the bottom here, you have this little arrow, and it kind of tells you rotate this to the side, and then this little tab flips down, and that's actually how the camera opens up. So underneath, just like that, you have this little pressure plate, and this is how you're going to change from shooting 120 or shooting 35 millimeter with an adapter. Basically, you could have a panorama adapter that you could load 35 millimeter film in here, and that's just to change the pressure of it so it knows how much pressure it needs to put based on the kind of film you have in there. On the bottom, this is where you're going to load your fresh film, and then you're going to run it up to this spool here, and we'll go ahead and load some film just so you guys can see how that works. I do have some, it's just a spool of paper. There's actually no film in here, but I just wanted to kind of demonstrate for you guys how it works. So when you load your film in the bottom, you pull this little tab out just like that, and that basically pulls the pin back. If you've shot any medium format, you've probably shot with a camera that has a similar function. You pull something out, you go ahead and put your film in, and then you push it back in to lock it in. Now, this step is pretty crucial. From everyone that basically almost everyone I've talked to, they've said this is extremely important. Now, I have heard from a couple of people that they never bother with it and they don't have issues. I personally have had issues when I've done this. So what you want to do is make sure your film goes underneath this little roller right here. Again, some people said they never have issues. I personally have, and just to prevent it, you might as well go ahead and take that step, because what this does is it's going to feel when the film comes through there, so it knows when to stop. If you put the roller or put the film or paper over this roller, it's not going to feel that tension, and you're going to wind through an entire roll. I've personally done that. It's no fun, so just to make sure you don't do it, just go ahead and make sure you always go underneath this first roller here. Now from here you'll go all the way over to your next spool, and it's kind of hard to show you guys from this angle, but basically you just feed it into the other spool just like you would any other 120 camera. Over here you flip this up and you'll start advancing your film, and I always advance it and kind of keep a little bit of pressure there until I see that start arrow line up right here. There might be a specific arrow or area where that's supposed to basically line up, but I don't see any on my camera, so I always start right there. I never have any issues. Now you're going to go ahead and close it, and then whenever you close it, that's when your frame counter actually gets reset. So you close it here, fold that down, and then slide this back over. From there, all you have to do is wind, and I actually don't know if this is going to stop because I don't have film on there, it's just paper. But we're going to go ahead and find out. Wind it until... and it's not going to do it because I don't have film on this roll, it's just paper. So basically, I'm winding through the entire thing. There we go. Now it says 1. So whenever you do that, it actually does stop you. So once it says 1, you go back up to here, you can close it down, and now you're ready to shoot. There you go. And then when you go to the next frame, right there, it stopped me. I'm going to rotate it back. There you go. And now it says frame 2. So that's how that works. As for the viewfinder, it's really simple. You just lift up right there. Can you see me? You might be able to. But basically, you just lift this up and everything just kind of pops into place. To close the viewfinder, all you have to do is pinch right here, and it'll automatically just kind of fold down into itself. Now, if you want to use a magnifier, which I do all the time when shooting, is I just flip this, you push in on this little window, and the magnifier pops up. When you're done with it, just push it down and it snaps back into place and it's out of your way, and then you can compose. Another thing that people do, I think people do it, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but whenever you flip this up, you can actually push it in all the way, and so you have this little open window essentially, and you're going to use this window here to compose through it, and this window here, which is actually basically like looking into a mirror, and you can actually focus on your ground glass on like a really small portion of it, and then you can focus and then compose with that just looking straight through the camera. I don't know why anyone would ever do that, but I guess you do have that option. And as far as getting it back up, all you have to do is just kind of push in on this, and that springs it back up into place. I'll go ahead and show you guys some of the accessories as well. So to take off the viewfinder, all you have to do is push down on these two little black little like clips, I guess, right here on the side, and the viewfinder just slides straight back. Now, I do have this prism viewfinder, and I've used this a couple of times for some portraits. Just having that eye-level prism, it's kind of convenient for portraits because otherwise a lot of your portraits are going to be from like a lower angle, so this is kind of nice to have. It came with the camera from the previous owners, so I just figured why not keep it. And I have used it a couple of times. So basically, you just slide that into place and it locks in, and now you have a beautiful dented up prism viewfinder. But you know, it does help, and it still works great. And you'll see some photos, some really kind of close-up headshots with some, I had like a big LED panel light using using that light source for the portraits. You'll see some of those photos in the photos I share here in just a minute. But I don't use it all that often, so I pretty much always just use the waist level viewfinder because it's so much more compact. I don't have this big, heavy kind of prism hanging around. If I know I'm wanting to shoot some portraits specifically, I might throw it in the camera bag, but I pretty much always use the waist level viewfinder. It's it's convenient because it's it pops up and then you can fold it down so it's smaller, but it's just easy. Once you get used to it, you kind of like it. Right here I also have a lens hood, which these are all bayonet mount lens hoods and filters, and just a simple little lens hood here. And the nice thing about it is you can actually use it over top of your filters, which I thought was genius because I've had cameras before where you have to take the lens hood off if you want to use a filter, and so then once your filter's on there, good luck avoiding any kind of lens flare. So just to show you some of the filters I've got, this is a close-up filter, same kind of concept as the Yashica matte ones that I talked about in the review of that way back when, but you have two little basically pieces here. So the long version that has the little red dot on it, you'll see that goes on the top for the viewing lens, and then this one here goes on the bottom. So like I said, if I want to put on my lens hood over the close-up filters, there you go. So that's a really nice setup. I use these filters all the time. I really like to get close with this camera. So, especially having both of them fit in this tiny little pack here, it's always in my camera bag because I use these things way more than I really thought I would. But I also have a couple other filters here, and I'll show you those as well. Take these off. Right here, these are some colored filters that I have. So there are a few different kinds in here. I have an extra lens hood in here, which just came extra with the camera. It came with 2 of them. And I also have some colored filters here. So I have a red filter, a yellow filter, and a green filter. And these are contrast filters for black and white film. So if you've never used these before, basically they filter out the different kinds of light in your scene, and they can dramatically change things, both for skin tones, for any kind of foliage, for skies. There's all kinds of different uses for these, and actually I'm going to be doing a video on KEH's blog here soon, so you'll definitely want to check that out whenever it comes to it, but I'm going to be covering this kind of stuff in that video. But basically it's really simple. You just put it on the taking lens here, and nice thing about it, with it being on a TLR, I'm not looking through a red photo as I'm shooting. I can just look through the regular taking lens without the filter and not have to worry about it. So those are just some of the accessories for the camera. Obviously there's a ton of different things you can buy for the camera. I use the lens hood all the time, and I use the close-up adapter all the time. Everything else I use on occasion. The strap is always on there just to be safe. It's a comfortable camera to hold, but it's definitely nice to have a strap on there. But yeah, those are pretty much all the accessories I have. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is show you guys some of my favorite photos I've made with this camera over the last 2 months. So there we have it. Those are some of my favorite photos I've made with the Rolleiflex 2.8F, and I hope you guys enjoyed those photos. I tried to share as many as I can from as many different situations as well, just to kind of show you that the camera is honestly pretty versatile. A lot more versatile than I was expecting, because I typically carry around my M6, and that's kind of my daily camera because it's quick and, you know, small, it stays out of the way. But with this camera, I was actually able to use it in a lot more quick kind of scenarios than I thought I would, because you know, with it being a waist level viewfinder, 6x6, it's not just something that I can just rapidly burn through film like I can with my M6, but I think just using it every day, that's obviously helped a ton, just getting really comfortable with the camera. Also having the brighter focusing screen in there, that definitely makes a big difference as well. So if you guys have any questions for me at all about the camera, please let me know in the comments. I honestly can't recommend the camera enough. You guys have heard me talk over and over and over about how nice and how smooth this thing is and just how much fun it is to use. And honestly, if you're gonna go with a TLR, a Rolleiflex, you can't go wrong with it. But at the end of the day, you know, it's always important to remember that it's not about the camera. You know, you can use any camera you want and make the kind of photos that, you know, you're going to make. You know, the camera isn't going to make you a better photographer. I can recommend this camera all day long, but if you're working with something, you know, that's less expensive, like a Yashica mat, an entry-level Rolleicord, or anything like that, you can still make great images. So yes, I definitely recommend the camera. Don't get too hung up on it though. If you have an opportunity to shoot one, I highly recommend it. But at the end of the day, you just need to get out there and shoot and make the best photos you can. So again, if you guys have any questions at all about the camera, just let me know and I'll try to answer anything I can. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.